Excellent. Hello, welcome. Thank you for coming and spending your time with us this afternoon. We'll just wait a couple of moments whilst people come in. My name is Andrea Perry. I'm an integrative psychotherapist, and I'm also the commissioning and content editor of Worth Publishing and Course We Do. And I will invite our different panelists today to introduce themselves. So this way on my screen is John. It may be somewhere completely different on your screen. John, perhaps you could introduce yourself.
Hello, everybody. My name's John Farden. I work in Northamptonshire for Northamptonshire County Council as an education inclusion officer for mental health. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And Pauline?
I'm a retired head teacher from Norfolk. I now live in Sheffield, but I was a head teacher in Norfolk and a special needs coordinator. And today we're talking about a project called Welly Wednesday.
Wonderful.
And my colleague is Sarah.
And your colleague is Sarah. Yes, Sarah, go ahead, please.
I'm Sarah, still in Sarah Rockcliffe, still in Norfolk, and my background is in education as teacher, and learning and behaviour support was my area.
Lovely, thank you. And then Fiona?
My name is Fiona Austin, and I am a positive psychologist specialising in anxiety, which has taken me to going outside to helping people feel good inside.
Yeah, lovely line. I really like that line. It's really
so it's about nature therapy.
Fantastic. And this is Lucy Wilton.
Hi everybody, I'm Lucy Wilton. I'm the course director of Course We Do, so the online division of Worth Publishing with Andrea.
Lovely. And we decided to do something on the theme of nature, having done a webinar, perhaps some of you came to at the end of the winter term, all about dogs. And that seemed to provide a very nice opportunity for people to share their love of dogs. And the reason why we did that was twofold, really. One was because in these webinars, if you've been before, we do invite you to participate through polls or through posting comments, or sometimes by sending photographs as well. So we'd really like to encourage you to use the chat today. If you do use the chat, please address your comments to everybody, to all panelists and attendees. There's a little drop down menu there. If you only send it to panelists, you only send it to us, but if you can send it to everybody, that would be great. So we'd love to have your comments in the chat. And what we're also going to encourage you to do is to, if you've got any really lovely photographs of nature that has meant something to you through the course of the pandemic, and you'd like to share them with others here, please do send them to Lucy, and then Lucy will be able to share them with us through the course of the webinar. So Lucy's going to put her information there, which you can, and she'll put it up periodically for you to send any photographs you'd like to share. So we did the one about dogs because we had noticed from hearing feedback from you that one of the things that seemed to sustain you most through lockdown was time outside with your dogs, or time inside with your dogs, but something about the nature of dogs. And we'd also come across some really interesting research about the canine ladder of aggression, which is extremely interesting. So we wanted to focus on that, but actually it was also a lovely celebration, I think, for those people who were there. John actually brought his dog on screen for us, as did Lucy, which was very nice. So that was a lovely thing. And then what we've also realized all the way through the pandemic is so many people saying to us that one of the key things that has facilitated their resilience has been nature. So we thought, well, let's have a webinar about nature as a way to end the term, and just to kind of remind ourselves about nature from all directions, really. So what I'm going to do first of all is just put up a little poll so that we can get a sense from you of how important has it been for you through nature. So could you tell me, Lucy, if you can see that? Thank you very much. So if you'd just like to try to complete this, there are quite a few questions here. And as I've said in the last couple of webinars, people asked me to be quiet while we're doing this, which is a big challenge for me. I shall now be quiet while you read through the questions. There's 6 questions here about you and nature through the pandemic. So let's just see what's been your experience. It would be great to share that just to start off with. So this is why I'm doing the webinar today, really. How important has nature and the outdoor world been to you? been really, really important, incredibly important for so many people. And during the pandemic, has the importance you attach, it's become a lot more important, or a bit more important, or pretty much stayed the same. So that's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. And we've been so cut off from it, haven't we, in some ways? And yet when we have had that time and experience, it's so much more important. Where you live, this is wonderful, isn't it? So you have got trees and woods, even if perhaps 93%, that's great. Fields, lucky people have got fields. I am full of envy, full of envy for the people who've got fields and open moorland. Anyone got seashore? Yes, we've got some seashore people here. I think that might be John, apart from anyone else. Everybody's got something. I'm so pleased to see you've got something. Lovely. And then which of the following have helped you? So the being outside, but the reason why I gave this whole range is because there is massive research evidence now that shows that all of these different things actually have positive impacts on our heart rate variability, making it more steady, on our all the alpha states in our brains, where when we go outside or when we think about nature, our brain goes into a state known as soft fascination, as opposed to very focused attention. Focused attention is where I'm reading a poll result, or I'm filling in a form, or whether I'm attending to something. Soft fascination is where it can drift and just be taken by anything that takes our attention. It's a very beautiful state to be in. So, and as we know, there's so much research evidence that shows that what's known as green exercise has multiple benefits. So if you're exercising in nature or being outside, walking actively in nature, it compounds the benefit of walking alone as well as being in nature alone. So that's really, truly wonderful that so many people are finding that benefit in so many different ways. And yes, so some painting pictures, looking at pictures, drawing. And to what extent do you draw in the natural world? Yeah, I have to say, I'm in this one. Had I been able to vote, I would have been here, but also quite a lot. Not sure, not much. So thank you, people, for coming and joining us. Maybe you've come here to find out whether nature maybe could be a bit more important to you. And has your perspective on climate change changed? Do you feel less anxious and more hopeful? Be really interested to hear as to why this person feels less anxious, or a couple of people feel more hopeful. But this is interesting. I've become more aware of how precious it is. Yeah. So I think that's shared, isn't it? And it seems as if there's been some space really to focus on such things, which is grand. I just wanted to share with you just a couple of resources that Lucy will put into the chat. So if I share my screen briefly. And I just wanted to show you a couple of things here. Excuse me. I hope that you are aware of this wonderful, wonderful resource. This is called the 5 Ways to Wellbeing, and it was created by, this is it, look, beautiful, lovely postcards. You can get a free set of beautiful postcards like this from the New Economics Foundation. And it sounds a bit strange, New Economics Foundation, what's that about? But actually this was an organization that was asked by the then government at the time in 2008 to research, like 5 fruit or vegetables a day, what would 5 core things be for well-being? So they did masses and masses of meta research, meta-analysis of different studies into well-being and resilience. And they came up with this wonderful series, which you can get from them free, of little postcards. And the 5 ways to well-being are connect, be active, take notice, keep learning, and give. And every single one of those 5 ways of well-being can very, very easily be located in nature at a stroke, really. So all of the 5, in a way, for you're getting 5 a day, can all be super easily connected up via the 5 ways to well-being by being or taking access into nature. So the next thing I just want to show you, Lucy will put the link of that in the chat for you. And as I say, you can get the report. You can either download the report or you can ask them for sets of cards. I give them out to people because they're so nice, and they're also very nice on the wall. And with my stepson, sometimes when he's kind of a bit low or something, I start talking to him and I go, well, there are them. And he goes, I know, I've been doing them. So they're really rather wonderful. This is also a most wonderful resource that you can download. It's actually from the mentalhealth.org.uk, and it's called Thriving with Nature. And there's a really great PDF that you can download here, which is absolutely full of really lovely resources and ideas and suggestions. So again, Lucy will put that in the chat for you as a link. Really, really worth doing. Gives you lots of ideas for adults as well as children and young people. Lots of lovely ideas and things in there, and very, very affirming and kind of beautifully transcribed onto paper as well. I also wanted to talk to you about black girls hiking. I'm very much aware we're a very white panel today. I have invited, unfortunately, a couple of people who couldn't be with us today from different organisations who really focus on the black community or the BAME community as well. I think Black Girls Hiking is a fantastic organisation. It's for adults. But it's really to ensure that Black women feel safe, supported, and can make the most of the outdoor environment. This is for adults, so it's for 18 plus. But I really think that's a wonderful resource, and I do hope at some point we'll be able to have someone from Black Lives Hiking come and talk to us about what they're doing and what you could join in with. Just for Black women over 18. But I think that's just so important, because we know that there are sections of our community who feel very disenfranchised, who don't feel that they have the right or the same kind of access to the natural world as perhaps some of others of us do. So I really support what they're doing, but also other organisations of a similar kind. And I think it's just so important also to think about the fact that I live in Croydon, which actually is the second greenest borough in London, although people never think of it that way. But you know, there are lots of urban areas where access to parks and green spaces is very, very, very limited, and little community gardens and community parks crop up in all sorts of wonderful ways. So I think it's just really important for us to kind of always remember that it's a wonderful thing, and we need to be able to support each other's access to it as well. So we're going to start off the presentations today with actually a short film. It's about 13 minutes, I think, and it's going to be from a woman who she'll introduce herself at the beginning, and her speciality is equine therapy with children and young people, but she also works with adults. And I think equine therapy is something that we can all learn from, both in terms of itself, but also in principle, because there are so many wonderful things that she says. So I hope you can just sit back on your sofas with your cups of tea.
I'm Sarah Stansfield. I'm a child and adolescent psychotherapist and an adult psychotherapist. And I also have trained as an equine psychotherapist with an organisation called LEAP. Their particular training means that the therapist is also the horse practitioner. Some different orientations have two therapists, so a therapist and a horse practitioner working, but I, for various reasons, have decided that I would prefer to hold the two roles. So that's my training. I work with children and young people and adults with my horses. I have a herd currently of 3 ponies. Their histories are all different. They tend to all have come with different issues. So one was a rescue pony. She has a lot of difficulties with trust, which makes her very useful in terms of working with attachment. There's another pony I have at the moment who's not mine, but that too is useful with looked after children who I work with on occasion. So effectively I have a foster pony, which can be really helpful with some of the dynamics that happen. Why equine therapy? So for me, I've always loved horses. I love nature. I love that ability to be outside, to work with the horses as very definite partners in my work. I don't regard them as tools at all. They are very definitely sentient beings who are an active, sometimes primary part of the therapy. And I would see that my role very often is as a container for the process. It's about, in effect, being a translator between me and the client, helping them understand the language of the horses and helping make sense of it and find meaning of it. I work with two different focuses depending on who I have. The work can be very horse-led, very dependent on what the clients are bringing, and a little bit like an enormous sand tray, which I also do in my non-horse work. It's that working with metaphor, working to see what dynamic emerges between horse and client. And at other times, and particularly this would be the case if I have a young person who might be ADHD or have autism, so giving a little bit more structure, so that it doesn't feel too overwhelming. So we might have some obstacles or challenges or activities that are offered to get to basically to form a framework within which they have, that we can explore what emerges from that. What I find is extremely useful is the horses are as herd animals. We're relying on the fact that as herd animals, they have evolved to keep themselves as a herd. So if they don't think individually, they think as a herd, and their survival depends on the herd, not individually. So that's a little bit different to us in many senses, but I think as community, as we need community just like they do, and they function from that. I think they tune into the dynamic so that when we join the herd, they will be highly attuned to our body language, to our breathing, to what is going on within us, and they will feed back to us and to themselves what our energy is like, what they're sensing from us, because their whole aim in life is to keep themselves safe. So they are very attuned to what is going on internally for us. Some people ask, does it matter that a young person or a child or someone who's coming, I do work with adults too, it might be afraid of the horses? I often say it's actually an advantage to have no experience with horses whatsoever. Very often when I'm working, if someone has a great deal of horse experience, I often find that we almost have to let some of that previous learning go, because we come with a lot of assumptions, and we come with a lot of I should do this, or I need to do this in a certain way. And my invitation as the therapist is to say, actually, this is an open space between you and the horses. The horse is free to be themselves. Equally, you are free to be yourself. So come as you are. That's my invitation, and that's the horse's invitation. So it's understandable that there will be a certain amount of anxiety or nervousness if you've not interacted with horses before. The way that I will work with that is we have a phased approach as I start work. So the first session could be, for example, that we might not go into the paddock with the horses at all. We might do the entire session on the other side of the fence, if that's what the client feels comfortable with. There's a lot of emotional exploration that we can do just by projecting what they're seeing. A lot of transference comes up and we can keep safe by staying the other side of the fence. Working with fear, though, is an interesting one. So obviously the horses are large, powerful, dynamic animals. Many young people, children that I have come to see, because of their own histories, have challenges with authority or challenges with power. It's often been misused with them in the past. So coming up against an animal that is large and bigger than them and far more powerful than them can understandably trigger a great deal of anxiety, a great deal of previous experiences that can come out and get acted out into the dynamic. But to be met with a horse who, whilst very in their body and strong in that, meets them with utter non-judgment, utter in the moment, that sense of be as you are welcome here, can be immensely healing, immensely releasing, and can build confidence particularly when a young person is able to find a way through their fear, through their anxiety, and meet the horse and find that they're met with kindness. Actually, I think that's possibly a human term, but I would most definitely see that with some of my horses, that they are beautifully sensitive in the way that they work with people. Anger is another one that people will ask me is, what happens if you're angry in session? Does that trigger things for the horses? Do they respond? Do they get angry back? So as flight animals, it is most normal that a horse who is in the presence of an emotion that they are unnerved by or not understanding, they will move away, sometimes quite quickly. So that in terms of safety, I will obviously manage the safety aspects of sessions. I won't allow dangerous situations to arise. But the horse's invitation to all of us is to be fully yourself, to own the emotion that you have. So what a horse will struggle with more than someone actually being angry is someone who's saying, I'm really not angry. That's the external message, but internally they're oozing anger, and it doesn't have to be. It can be a mismatch of anything. So that sense of inauthenticity in what we're presenting, that's what the horses will respond to, because it leaves them disquieted. That sense of the energy doesn't quite match when they're in the herd, and that will keep them unsafe. There's been a fracture in the herd dynamic, and they seek to address it. And how they do that is by mirroring to us, something's not quite okay here. And they'll show that sometimes with their body language. So tiny subtle messages, you might get a horse just moving away or shaking its head, various tiny subtle messages just in terms of different muscle tension in a horse. Their eye contact, they might turn their body, all very subtle, but something doesn't add up here, what's going on? And that gives me the opportunity with the client to explore, hang on, what are you sensing from the horse? What messages are you picking up? And very often it's like, well, I'm feeling this, but actually inside of me, I'm feeling something different. And so the beautiful and powerful message of the horse is, it is okay that you name your emotion, that you are fully yourself in the moment. You don't have to hide anything. You can be you. And as soon as someone can step into their emotion, and I've seen this happen on multiple occasions, genuinely the horse will breathe out as if to say, you're finally here. It's very nice to meet you. Which can be very, it's a healing message to experience that, of someone saying, you can just be you, it's fine. Whatever you're bringing, just be you, which has been lovely. There was, just to give you an example as well, of people meeting themselves in the horses, really. So I've been working with a 14-year-old who, she has a number of challenges. She hasn't been diagnosed, but is likely on the autistic spectrum somewhere. So my work with her, because too much space is overwhelming for her, so I structure sessions a little bit more, just so that she's got a framework to anchor herself on. In one particular session, she was working with my smallest pony, who happens to be a miniature Shetland, who, because of her size, often gets the projections of how innocent and how lovely and how tiny and how childlike she must be. She's actually hugely feisty, and probably out of all three of my herd, the one who knows her mind most, and is very capable of doing exactly what she chooses and nothing else, which is wonderful to work with. She's quite a force to be reckoned with. So the challenge was to invite the pony to move through a series of obstacles, of which the pony working with the girl was having absolutely none of it and just rooted her feet to the floor and wasn't moving anywhere at all. So messages started appearing from the girl in terms of, oh, well, she's really stubborn and she won't move, and she's really hard work. So afterwards we did a little bit of reflecting, and what she realized was that in many senses she'd met herself, which was slightly eye-opening to her, but equally we could reframe it as, wow, how powerful and how incredibly determined and sure she is, and what strength she has, because previously it had been understood as extremely negative. So just to reframe stubborn into something that helped her understand some of her reasonings for her actions was hopefully releasing for her. If someone was wanting to access equine psychotherapy for their child or young person, I would really recommend it for those that find verbal and room-based therapy too intense or too intimidating. The beauty of equine work is it's very non-verbal. We do talk, I do help translate, but at times that's not necessary at all. And some clients actively do not need the words, they just need that embodied sense of shift that happens. And I think there's something in that for me about it being heart work rather than mind work. I often say to people, for me it's very similar to sound tray work. It drops straight down to heart level, which is why I find it just incredibly powerful. But for any, it's really, really helpful for young people who, for whatever reason, would struggle within the challenges within the space of four walls, and who need that space, who need that immediate non-judgmental feedback from sentient beings who aren't human. It can be quite useful.
Lovely. Thank you so much for sharing your screen with that. So I think that's really lovely. And Lucy, I'm sure we'll put the connection for Sarah and her way of working from equine therapy, because there are different models. But I don't know about you, but just even watching that and hearing her talking about it, I find very, very relaxing, because she describes it so beautifully, and especially that sense of working in the non-verbal, but with these amazing sentient beings. So really very beautiful. So Pauline and Sarah, Sarah, would you like to share your screen, and both of you come off mute, and we can hand over to Sarah and to Pauline. And this is their lovely book, Using Outdoor Learning to Improve Behaviour for All. I have to say, we didn't publish this book, but nonetheless we were very, very delighted that David Fulton did, and David Fulton is offering a discount to you guys if you were to want to get the book from Pauline and Sarah. So we'll let you know about that later. So thank you, Sarah and Pauline.
Thank you, Andrea. We'd like to invite you to enjoy some photos and a brief introduction to our Welly Wednesday project. It demonstrates what can be achieved by using the outdoor environment as a vehicle for learning. It enabled families to take steps forward to a positive future. The invited children came to Welly Wednesday as a group of 4 from separate schools for 6 consecutive Wednesdays. They'd been referred because they had been excluded from school or were only managing to attend part-time. They were aged 6 and 7 years old. We saw their behaviour as attention needing and troubled, rather than attention seeking or troublesome. Our task was to help them to feel positive about themselves and about school, and to ensure inclusion in school in future. Our team was made up of professionals in education and experienced volunteers. We worked in positive partnership with the children's schools and the Norfolk Psychological Service, who funded our project. We knew that change could only happen by working together with parents and carers. This included foster parents, adoptive parents, step-parents, and key workers. So each child came to Welly Wednesday with their significant adult. The setting was a beautiful and welcoming countryside centre. It was a 15-mile journey in a minibus from the children's schools in Norwich. The two managers at the centre offered their support, commitment and expertise, and also the minibus. The day began when the families were collected from the children's schools. It was an essential part of the project that the return journey at the end of the day, as well as the collecting at the beginning of the day, involved the two experienced members of the team. The families arrived in time for a welcoming breakfast in the large outdoor shelter with a glowing fire in the central fire pit to provide warmth. The day started with a welcome and informal conversation, which included sharing our group beliefs. We specifically avoided the word rules. These shared beliefs established an agreement that this is how it would be in this place, at this time, each week when we were all together. It was also explained that each week there would be a consistent structure to the day to ensure that everyone felt safe. The daily plan was always shared on a visual timetable. Food cooked on the fire became an important part of the day. Some children needed reassurance that there would be enough food for everyone. The weather was often cold or wet, and children were given waterproof clothes. There were outer garments to keep them dry over the top of their normal clothes. Spare warm clothes were also available for both adults and children. Just as the fire provided physical warmth, meeting together in a circle created warm, trusting relationships and built a sense of togetherness. In between the environmental activities, the group came together for regular planned circle times throughout the day. On arrival, the children were allocated a small tent each as their own personal space. They were given a tent friend each, along with pillows and cozy blankets and calming tent time activities. They were given a large bag each to store their belongings safely from week to week. One of the first activities for the children was to make a label for their tent to establish and name their personal space. A quiet tent time was planned into the day after lunch for the children to enjoy time alone in their special place. This was followed by a free playtime where children played informally together, creating their own games and building friendships. Amber said, "At Welly Wednesday, I noticed more people like me. I didn't know that before." During tent time and this informal playtime, the parents and carers were given time to talk together with Sarah. At the start of these meetings, Sarah suggested to them, "While we are together, let's think not just about who you are now, but who you would like to be in the future."
When the parents came together, it was a time for them to realise they were not alone in their anxieties and concerns about their children. A solution-focused approach was used to discuss and envisage new ways to move forward, incorporating learning derived from compassionate focused therapy, human givens, and attachment and attunement theory. But the parents also benefited from more informal times together by being given challenges to work on between themselves. These required the children waiting to find out what their parents had been up to. In this case, it was to build a waterproof shelter in the woods. You can imagine the excitement as the children followed the trail of stick arrows left for them, and then their delight at being invited to throw water over the shelter while the parents cowered inside, hoping they'd managed to make it leak-proof. On other occasions, they were given wood and string and tools and asked to make a mobile to hang in the shelter. And when they had practiced this, they were then asked to share what they'd learned and teach the children how to do it. But each week there were also times when the whole group went into the woods and the surrounding fields all together. And I'd like to read you a quote by one of the fathers, the father of Sammy, who said, "One thing I've noticed was how all the children started noticing a bird in a tree, a beetle on the path, things they wouldn't have noticed before. They all changed and they were becoming more inventive. You couldn't get an idea out of them at first. And as it went on, there was more and more ideas coming out of all the children, and some really good ones. They pulled you back with some of the things they said each week as they were getting more involved." But being out in the countryside was challenging for some, and at first many were quite fearful of the woods and afraid of the sheep. Several asked if sheep could eat people. And the adults too were often out of their comfort zone. But these experiences and feelings gave us opportunities to address their difficulties, including using narrative approaches. There were stories and sayings and songs and lessons from animal characters who just happened to have the same difficulties as the children. These all helped to change thinking and cope with uncomfortable feelings and challenging behaviour. As one mother said, learning about the animals, they each had a story with a meaning. The kids were glued listening. Even I was too. I definitely gained from it. But a meeting with sheepdog Meg and her owner Kevin was always popular. As they watched Meg, the group were amazed to find she could do all the things that they were trying to practice: waiting, listening, following instructions, cooperating, and helping. But her story of being given a new home with Kevin and becoming a successful working sheepdog held a deeper meaning for some. She had a particular effect on one adopted child. She said to her adoptive father very pensively, "Meg really loves Kevin, doesn't she?" And on another occasion, as a child listened to Meg's story, he moved closer to his foster carer and slipped his hand into hers, smiling and keeping it there as they turned and walked back to the camp together. At other times, we found that it is often the moments of overcoming difficulties, seeing struggles through, and working together that can be the windows of opportunity for bringing about change. Many times we've witnessed quite profound moments. We saw a child spontaneously bonding affectionately with their foster carer after overcoming a disagreement. We've seen so many parents who had struggled with their children's behaviour being able to see their child differently as they worked and played alongside them, enjoying their days of learning together. Throughout the day, returning to the fire provided so many different opportunities. Here, safety issues, difficulties presented by food, talking, listening, laughing, preparing meals and washing up, all happened whilst enjoying the warmth of the fire. One of the jobs that always needed doing was collecting the firewood. This can be a marvellous opportunity for children to learn to cooperate with each other as they manoeuvre a trailer through the woods, between the trees, over the humps and bumps of uneven ground. For children who struggle with socialising, it's always heartening to see how rewarding they find the experience of cooperating can prove to be. Another way in which the fire can be used is to make charcoal for drawing with. Returning the following week to use the cooled results, impulsive children who often experience great frustration at having to wait can be given a taste of the fun that's involved in anticipation and delayed gratification. Even the not always popular smoke could be used. It's such an emotive smell that it became one of the transitional objects that we created. On their final visit, the children decorated hankies and hung them up over the fire to take home at the end of the day. So whenever they felt the need, they could be transported back to Welly Wednesday by the evocative smell. At a follow-up visit to a child in his new school, he told me he had his hanky in his bag, and sometimes at break time, he went to smell Welly Wednesday to feel calm. Another child told me that she kept her Welly Wednesday dog bag on the back of her, on her peg, but if she was struggling, her teacher would let her go and get it and put it on the back of her chair, and she'd feel reassured by having the puppy there. There were many messages and strategies learned at Welly Wednesday that the children and their families were able to successfully transfer into their daily lives. But the ending of each day was all important.
The final circle time at the end of the day was a time for quiet reflection around a candle. We called this our beautiful thoughts time. Throughout the day, positive choices, acts of thoughtfulness and kindness were noticed, however small, and written notes were made. Ongoing affirmation was given. At this final circle time, a specific compliment was given to each member of the group. Children who had been used to criticism, who had often been making poor choices, were surprised and encouraged by hearing positive comments about themselves. They began to compliment each other. One child said, "I'd never thought of saying kind things to people before." Another child said that she liked it when her teaching assistant was given a compliment, adding, "I didn't think Leanne would get one because she is a grown-up." The compliments and Welly Wednesday photographs were collected together in a memories book for each child to take home at the end of the 6 weeks, along with their tent friend. At the end of the day, the families were taken back to the schools in the minibus. The whole team then gathered by the fire to evaluate the day. The notes written during the day were shared and plans were made for the following week, which addressed each individual child's needs. Out in the countryside, change seemed to happen. Trust and respect grew. The outdoor environment brought everyone together as a positive group. It provided a vehicle for change to happen and for the families to take steps forward to a positive future. And that was Goodbye Woodland Faces to say goodbye to Welly Wednesday.
I don't know if you can see any likenesses. The children, some of the children made those, and it's us.
Wouldn't dare comment. Wouldn't dare comment. Would you like to tell us any other brief little story about any of the other things? You've told us so many marvelous things.
Oh.
So many really, really interesting details. What kind of remains with you most, or any particular child, obviously anonymized, that you might like to share with us?
There were so many wonderful, wonderful things that happened, and things that children said, and changes that happened. Trying to pick out one or two. I'm not quite sure.
I think there was a link with, for children being in walls in classrooms that they found incredibly difficult. It was being out in the countryside that we were able to change the way that they worked together, the way they collaborated, the way they thought. Everything seemed to change out in the countryside.
And what do you attribute that to?
Well, I would say that a lot of the children that we were meeting had had a very negative experience of school, and a lot of their parents had also had a very negative experience of school, and were quite kind of anxious about going into school and talking things through. Mm-hmm. And I think what we were able to do was be a kind of facilitator in their relationship. So the parents felt much more able to go and talk to the schools about the children, because we'd established a kind of some targets for them, a way of working with them, a way that meant they didn't mind not being at the front of the queue, that they did like being in a circle where there wasn't a front and a back. And it just, the environment outside, even when one child decided to run away, we knew that he would come back. We just sang a song which kind of called his name to the tune of London's Burning and said, "Where's Ryan? Where's Ryan?" And eventually he just came back. I just kept an eye on him to make sure he was safe, but he didn't go far because nobody was calling him back. Nobody was chasing after him. Mm-hmm. And he came back and joined the group, and everybody was pleased to see him.
Lovely. Lovely. And I'm wondering if you think that, people watching this would like to take some ideas from practical things that maybe people can try out, even if they can't do something as beautiful as the whole of Welly Wednesday, which, you know, is quite an enterprise, isn't it? And you start speaking about
It
minibuses
is.
and taking out, and it really quite a marvelous, but some things quite elaborate. What kind of simple things? Have you got a couple of simple thoughts that people might like to try from things that you did? You did so many things, such a superbly creative project.
One of the things that is just having faith in the process of taking children outside. It's a huge sensory experience, and children need that. They, you know, the two things would really be, they need relationships, so take them in a group, and they need, once they get outside, they find their own things to do anyway. So even if you weren't quite sure what they might do, you know, they will want to look at trees, feel them, they see, they taste, they hear, they smell, and that's enormously helpful to their development. Things like coordination can be improved by being outdoors. So I think, you know, you don't have to be able to do a whole project to be very beneficial. And we did I think what the other thing that was beneficial was that we were able to engage parents and carers, because it was quite an exciting idea to be outside, quite challenging for them, but it did mean that we could put children and their parents together in a completely new environment. So they were both being challenged, so they could support each other in learning something new.
You talked about the narrative approaches to anxiety about the countryside. I wonder if you could just expand on what that might mean.
Well, the idea is the narrative approaches comes from narrative therapy, which is very much about the problem is the problem, the person isn't the problem. And the more you can externalize the problem and look at it, you can then begin to engage with how to deal with it. So we would be using stories and trying to personify something that was difficult for them, and then they could explore it. So as I said, you know, little characters would come along who'd got the same problem as some particular child. It would never be specifically said. You know, we had a child with a terrible problem of, you know, eating anything and everything. It was a sufficient safety issue. So quite by chance, for that group of children, we had a puppet called Crunch the Croc, and he had awful difficulties. He had these wonderful teeth, and he would eat everything with them. And then we asked the children how he could solve the problem. And so the children began to get involved in solving Crunch's problem. And of course, the child for whom it was concerned it was interesting. The following week after she met, the first thing she said on arrival was, "Is Crunch the Croc here this week?" But we never said anything about it being her problem. So very much about the problem is the problem, and then you can look at it. If you're the problem, it's a bit that you can only be defensive.
Absolutely.
I think one of the most important things that we did was to introduce the idea of compliments and to notice and comment on tiny things that children were getting right.
Yeah.
Even if there were lots of things that weren't appropriate behaviour, we would focus on the little thing that they were getting right and build upon that. And if you asked, you know, a child to come and they came but they stamped or they were grumpy or something, then you would just say, "Thanks for coming to join us," and ignore all the, you know, if you knocked something over on the way or, you know, kicked the bench, it would still be just "Thanks for joining us," and focusing on those positives. And I think that's something that, you know, the parents found very helpful at home. I think they suddenly found that they could ignore an awful lot of what was going on and just immediately pick up on the one thing that they were really doing well.
That's lovely. I really like the fact that you said that one of the children really enjoyed the fact that their tutor was given a comment, or their mentor was given a compliment.
It was a teaching assistant, yes.
Which I really, really liked. But I think what was interesting was when the child also said, "I didn't think they'd get one because they're an adult." And I must say, I've sat through various things where children are given compliments or clapped or whatever, and then adults are not. And I think that's such a bad message, because it says, don't want to be an adult, mate, because when you're adult, all the compliments and the clapping stops. I think it's essential that we clap and appreciate adults as well. as children and young people, so there's continuity. Otherwise, what possible incentive is there to grow up and become one of us? Not a good plan. So that's really lovely. And I also really wondered what you were going to say about, because the transitional objects and smoke, and I was thinking, how on earth are you going to do that? But I love this idea that that the handkerchiefs actually, because it's such a redolent smell, isn't it? It's such a trigger of the outside. I don't know about you, but where I live now, sometimes I go out and someone is burning wood smoke. I'm afraid I know it's terrible for the environment, all those particulates being released, but it is such a gloriously evocative smell. And what a lovely thing they had that to hand. Lovely.
We did do sounds as well and send them home with a CD of different woodland sounds.
That's lovely.
And the sound of the fire and the cooking.
Lovely. John, can I bring you in at this point? Any connections to, sorry, put you on the spot. Any connections to what's been said here? Any kind of connections to things you've done or that you might take away from this?
Two things. Just as somebody mentioned sounds that they could take away, I was watching Country File on Sunday, and there was a guy who's a beatboxer, and he was recording, they'd heard the dawn chorus in the woods, and he was able to, in some way, beatboxing, replicate some of the bird sounds and recorded those sounds. It's absolutely amazing. So I think it's really interesting looking at the different senses that are used when we're out in nature. And children, I just think about when I worked in a residential school for children, where it was called emotional and behavioural difficulties in those days, and in my class we each had an individual garden plot. I gave them a plot of land that they could grow their own things, and some of the children who I didn't think were going to respond in the way they did, they just absolutely loved just being on the plot, being on the estate. And so if you don't have time to do a project like Welly Wednesday and have loads and loads of expertise like Pauline and Sarah, just being outside with your with children, I work a lot with children in care, and sometimes I've been able to go for a little walk around the school grounds or a nature area in the school grounds with their key adult and myself, and that's just a great place. They would talk. We could talk about anything, but just being out there, and they could pick up sticks, stones, what have you. So little bits are still well worth doing, is what
absolutely. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing this with us. Would you like to share your screen and show us some of the pictures that you've gathered so far before we turn to Fiona?
Yes, sure. We've got some lovely ones coming through. So keep them coming, everybody, if you haven't done already. So here we've got signs of spring.
Definitely.
I know, it's lovely when you look through your window. Well, I can see my son planted some bulbs in the autumn, and normally we kill everything, but they've they've survived, and I can actually see them now, which is lovely.
Bravo.
And here, blossom. I didn't know blossom was out.
This is a winter. It's a winter blossom one. It's really lovely. It's been like that since the end of December. Quite amazing.
Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. And then we've got Kizzy the pony is the one in the middle. So I think it's maybe the white one turning round to look at us. But this is from Lisa. We're carrying on the equine.
That's very nice.
Theme.
Gorgeous fields. Lovely.
And then we've got Alicia down by the sea.
Oh, Alicia, thank you. Look at that. That is spectacular.
Gorgeous.
What a lovely time of day with the light. Just beautiful.
That's glorious.
And I think someone been digging. Lovely. And more.
Yeah, it's a couple more spring ones. Lovely.
Forgive me, I don't know the name of flowers.
There's yes, it's a hellebore on the right. I'm not sure about the one on the left, but it's a hellebore. So
lovely. And then we've got going to a wintry theme. Faith is keeping sane through COVID. This must have been one of her walks during lockdown with the snow.
Gorgeous.
It's lovely. And carrying
on. You
can
feel the cold, can't you?
Yes. Carrying on the winter theme. We've got a fox. I think they're wonderful creatures. Look at that.
Big.
And then Fiona has sent one in.
Oh, Fiona, thank you. Where is that, Fiona? That's so lovely. Gosh, dreaming of the day of that.
You wouldn't think, but it's actually in Wormwood Scrubs.
You wouldn't think. Amazing. Okay, lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Liz. Oh, some more. Yep.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
So I'll flick through the one. Another one from Alicia, loving her wintry themes. And this was mine. This was my.
Oh, Lucy, that's stellar. That's glorious. We'll have to go over to Lucy later on as well to see what other pictures have come in, but then also Lucy can share a nice little treat with us a bit later on. Thank you, Lucy. That's really gorgeous. Thank you so much. So if you've got other photographs, do send them to Lucy and then we can share them together. I think it's just lovely. Even just looking at pictures, isn't it? It's just so amazingly super relaxing. That's lovely. Okay, so Fiona, can I invite you to come off mute, please? And the other panelists, Pauline, if you can go back on mute, please, that'd be grand. So Fiona is a positive psychologist. You seem like a very positive psychologist all general, but I know it's a particular arm of psychology, but a psychotherapist specializing in anxiety and returning from Spain and Gibraltar. But I love your strapline of going outside to heal inside. I think that's really, really splendid. So thank you. Over to you.
First, to acknowledge what I've been listening about the Welly Wednesday and the equine therapy. Absolutely amazing. And I must say that you having mentioned that I lived in Spain, it was where Nature Sense actually began. We would take people with the benefit of the wonderful weather for walks along the beach, and then it sort of developed that you could see that people were using the symbolism of the waves coming in, the waves going out. They would just sort of naturally gravitate towards it. And as is the wonderful world of synchronicity when you're open to these kind of things, I met somebody who did wilderness therapy. So it occurred that he would look after the children making fires, and I was there on hand from a psychological perspective. But it turned out that I was actually sort of on the side therapy, give therapy to the parents because of their anxiety. And I would find that I'd take them to the sand dunes and just let them be. And so it was born. And when I came back to the UK after 10 years, I felt I had to say goodbye to it all, because I thought, well, we went to the beach and the amazing weather. But after a few years, I saw that, well, actually, if there was ever a place with the hubbub of the city and London that you need nature. And so I resurrected it in a different form, in its simplest, which is walking, talking with clients. But took the experience of Spain and put together a teaching program for therapists and coaches. Especially in the past year that we have, people have been put onto Zoom. So it's bringing in that balance that, you know, you're sort of living in harmony with tech, and the only way to do that is actually to get off the tech. But you know, it was incredible to have situations. For instance, I was working with Anxiety UK, and you'd be on the phone, on the helpline, and it would be, I'd be outside with the phone, walking and talking somewhere remotely for confidentiality, of course. And the people were so frightened. They couldn't believe that you were outside. And there was one particular lady who hadn't been out for 6 weeks, and I got her to go to the window and tell what she could see. And very strangely, she told me she could see a lamppost. And I said, well, what else can you see, knowing that we're never too far really from nature? And she said, blossom. I thought, how extraordinary that she thought of the modern sort of, and so we spoke a bit about it. And I was on the phone for about 20 minutes, but she had taken herself downstairs, taken herself to the door, gone across the road to the tree and touched it, listened to a bird, and come back in and burst out crying, but burst out tears of joy, because she felt she was okay. And she breathed in what the trees were breathing out, and she felt it kind of encouraged that it was okay, and things were going to be okay. And I think very often taking front as an illustration, just knowing that you've got this place, this natural resource, we evolved within it, and we think that evolution is being on Zoom. We think, but it's not, it's just a part of our dynamic, but we need to bring in that balance. So when I train coaches and therapists, it's about kind of giving them permission to just act with spontaneity to what there is, and to understand that actually most of the work is done unconsciously, because our limbic system, our kind of reptilian brain, is constantly looking. And when it's in nature, it's hearing a bird, it's seeing or smelling. At the moment, it's like walking through ice cream. It's the blossoms are so amazing. And your limbic system unconsciously, you don't have to do anything, just goes down very gently. So as a therapist, you're not doing much. You know, you could spend weeks talking in talk therapy, but what in one session, just giving that person the confidence, because city dwellers are, they're alienated. They think, why should I go for a walk? Where would I be walking to? And it's kind of getting them used to it and knowing that it's fully accepting. It's that it's called the aesthetic affective theory, that nature, kind of gurgling streams and birds tweeting, actually just aesthetically lets you know that things are okay. And it also, for children, of course, as the Welly Wednesday saying, it's kind of nature is the Ritalin, the natural Ritalin. You're just out there. And for adults in productivity, you've got your executive coaches and you've got your high flyers. What happens, again, unconsciously, is that we're spending all day with a directed attention. And that requires a huge effort. But in nature, you become just fascinated. You don't ask to be fascinated, but you can see a butterfly. You can go in and think, well, what I've seen is brambles. But actually, when you start to become fascinated, you go, oh my God, it's a blackberry. And then you go, oh, it's more. And your eyes become attuned, because it's taken millions of years for our eyes to be kind of highlighted to food. So when we see one, we see more, and they're scoffing away. And it's amazing, because it's still in cities, like that photograph that Lucy showed, that was in Wormwood Scrubs. That's like, you know, the side of an A road, but it's expansive and actually has loads of blackberries and birds, and it has a nature reserve. So teaching therapists to know that going for a walk and a talk, and sometimes it doesn't need a talk, that a lot of it is unconsciously supporting your client, and you're also giving them a gift that they then can do it. It's an empowering gift to stand on their own, that they don't then have to be in therapy, that they too can go for a walk. And you get to learn about the terms, that breathing, just that simple kind of thing that we think we know how to do. Actually, we're not very good. We've turned into a nation of mouth breathers, whereas, you know, over your computer, you can't breathe properly. Taking in a deep breath brings you punctuation, just it stretches that moment where you have a choice. Will I be stressful or will I relax? So nature is just this gift. And London is, if not the greenest city in the world, capital city in the world, there is, so you trip over nature, but you tend to think, you know, oh, I've got to go to the supermarket, I've got to do this, but actually just going, where's my green space, which what happened in this last year. I had a lady who came on one of the courses, and she said that she got lost where she had been living for the last 33 years. She did not know that the green space out of the back of her house was so big. And she said, you know, she's usually busy jumping on a bus and going here and going there. So it really is something that we need to rediscover, and especially to encourage for the younger generation, because if they don't connect with it, they'll wonder, why is there a big space like Wormwood Scrubs? Let's turn it into a car park. It's not like that. That's where you can simply get and be, and we very rarely get a time to disconnect so we can reconnect to ourselves. And that's what I think I would really like to bring to as many people as possible, is proper connecting with nature. So any questions, if anyone has them? Like I say, I'm just here to...
Yeah. Thank you so much, Fiona. When you said, I just feel like I could listen to you for hours. Well, I could listen to everybody just for hours. Really, my face has been aching with smiling with everything you've been saying. Thank you so, so much. And I think if people would like to put any questions in the chat, and also I think Lucy was going to put in the chat, or maybe has done so. Yeah, there's your contact details if anyone wanted to contact you about that training that you offer. And I know you talk about forest bathing, and you talk about the relationship with trees, don't you? There's so many different subject areas that maybe we can come back to that at the end after.
Yeah, it's scary because once I'd start, I have to rein myself in. But the relationship we have with trees is just, and that's forest bathing, and that isn't a training. That's for everybody.
Wonderful.
And it's just the most amazing thing, because you can't do it wrong. It's just about going outside and, you know, becoming fascinated with some what you would consider nothingness, and you just come away going, oh my gosh. And what can be an hour can feel like a forever, but also a secret in your pocket. You can take a stone home and look at it and know, actually, I can do that anytime.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I think we're going to have to get you back at some point next term, after Easter, to talk us more through those and bring us some of your pictures of your favourite trees. Thank you so much, Fiona. It's absolutely tremendous. Really lovely to hear from you. Okay, John, can I invite you to, would you like to, Fiona, if you wouldn't mind, and John, can I invite you to share your screen?
Absolutely.
Thank you. You may wish to connect up with what Fiona's been talking about as well, but you're going to take us in a different direction, which is really lovely too.
I don't know how different it is really, because it all seems connected. Just to let you know, those of you that are here today, it was about 2 weeks ago that Andrea asked me if I would talk about blue space, and I don't know where she got the idea from to ask me, because I'm not an expert in this at all. However, I'm happy to share and open up for any form of discussion that people want to take of it. So I've done a little bit of research, and this is the research. What I'll probably do is show you one or two things, and then talk about it, and please ask any questions you like. So my first question was, what on earth is blue space? So I found this definition, which I thought is rather a good one. A health enabling place where water is at the center of that specific environment. And I just happened to have this picture, which I took when on holiday or having a break down in Dorset. And I realized, having done this research, is the fact that I live in Milton Keynes, which is probably as far away as you can get from the sea. So why not ask John to talk about being by the sea? But actually, going down to Dorset, where we used to stay in the forest and stay in a caravan, then go down to the beach and the pebbles and the sand, it's something that's at the very center of my being. So hearing academics and people doing research projects about what it does for mental health, which I'm also passionate about, then I'm so glad to see these things that have happened, that it decreases anxiety and stress, encourages physical activity, aids recovery, reduces socialization. Yes, it does all of those things. There has been research taken, as you can see from the bottom of this slide, from Exeter University. I'm going to skip the video for the moment because I just have a touch of Zoom anxiety as to whether it's going to play properly. So I'll leave that little bit for the moment. The video clip or the film clip, I may still play or may just leave you to play. If you look on YouTube, you can find a guy called Wallace J. Nichols. Apologies to him, I gave him an extra L in his name on the hyperlink on the previous slide. But he is a marine biologist, and he writes and he talks about the benefits of blue, of water, being close to water. And as Fiona was quite rightly saying about London, I could say the same about Milton Keynes. They've created green spaces, linear parks with water flowing through them to help us to feel better, because we're living in grid squares in Milton Keynes, and there's concrete cows, and there's lots of roundabouts and cars whizzing around and lots of traffic. However, you can walk in these lovely little linear parks and be refreshed. Today, because I'm so often sitting in front of a laptop in my study, carrying out my work, every lunchtime I take the dog out and go for a walk. Today we went into the linear park and I saw a heron, and then the heron suddenly decided to take off and watched it fly, and this was right next to the water. But we don't even have to go that far. We could even just jump in the shower or walk past a house and, you know, they've got a little fountain, water running down the edge of the, around the edge of their water feature. So I'd like you to pop in the chat whilst I hopefully get something up on the screen to share with you, something of my experience in Dorset, 2 little film clips, neither of them longer than 1 minute. One is a little waterfall and the other is the waves on the seashore. But I'd like you to put in the chat what being near water does for your mental health, and to be able to share that, if you're able to, in the chat. And there may be some things that we have in common, and there may be some things that are different. You think, oh yeah, I hadn't thought of that. An additional thing that you could put in the chat, or we could open up for discussion, is how have you used water with children? And what have your experiences been in working with children and water? I'll tell one little story whilst I stop that share and I start a new share. There was a little boy in my class that we took away with a whole group to Wales, and we went to the sea. But he used to call it, he was actually, I didn't know at the time, but he was on the autistic spectrum, and he lived in London opposite the traffic lights on a big road. So he would often talk about red and green. And when we went to Wales, we were not far away from the sea, and he'd say, are we going to the big pool today? Are we going to the pool today? Can I ask somebody who's not muted, can you see the picture of the sea there?
Yes, thank you.
I'm now going to play this just for a minute, and hopefully you may get the sound too. This is Dorset and the experience of just... So even though we can't be by the sea right now, or some of you are. 33%, I believe, were very close to the sea earlier on today. I will move on to the next slide here. And I hope you were able to get the feeling of being by the sea as the waves came through there. I might just pick a little bit up in the chat here. Yes, so we've got sitting with a child who didn't want to go in the sea in the shallows, talking together about the foam, splashing around to the point where she was so happy she didn't want to come out of the sea at all. Wonderful. The sound and the movement of the waves being so relaxing and calming. Definitely restorative and puts me back into my body and makes me feel alive. Absolutely. There was another film clip which I might just not use right now because I just realized there's not a lot of time left. I would like to show you some pictures from a situation where I was in Wales, and this is a personal story really. I was in Wales, somewhere near Fishguard in the mountains, at a sort of a type of a retreat centre, a place called Brenin. And this place was just north of Fishguard, and I just went there on a Saturday afternoon. And I remember going out onto the beach. This was the beach as it was, coming towards the end of the day. And I just remember running and running and running for joy in the sand, because it was just so amazingly, stunningly beautiful there. Now, I realize that many of us can't be near the sea, but we can somehow help children and help ourselves to maybe to connect with water. Well, this is the linear park I was talking about in Milton Keynes. It was a few days before I saw the heron today, but you can certainly hear the birds singing. And that's also Milton Keynes on one of the lakes. So if you can be by near lakes, that's another way of replicating the benefits of being by the water. And if I just give a couple of anecdotes from a couple of children I worked with, one was regarding fish. And this boy was just fascinated by watching fish in the fish tank. And he would also love going out fishing. And those were the times when he was totally calm and immensely calm. Whereas there were other times when he was completely the opposite of that. And it was the fish and the water that helped him to do that. And so I'm not going to share any more pictures. I'm not going to say any more, but if anyone has any questions they'd like to ask, or any, maybe Andrea, if you've got comments or things that people want to put in there, please do that.
Lovely. Thank you so much, John. The reason why I asked you is because when you presented for us before, you had lovely pictures of your lovely dog on a beach. And it seemed to me that that was the heart of what you love. And for some reason I had it fixed in my head that that was somewhere near to you, clearly not in Milton Keynes. But I think what's lovely is that you've also said to us, and it could be Milton Keynes, where it's thought of as concrete cows and it's thought of as roundabouts, but actually Milton Keynes also has got that provision, hasn't it? And not just the green ways, but the blue ways as well. Yeah. Which is beautiful. And John wore his special blue sweater and blue shirt today to, thank you very much, honour us with your blueness. So thank you. Someone has just said here in the chat, I think I couldn't agree more. There's very refreshing and calming just to hear that sound. I was drifting away with that, and the imagery that you produced, beautiful, beautiful photographs. But yes, just the tragedy that Alicia has put in the chat there. Some children, I don't know if you've had this experience, John, of living so close to the sea or to any natural environment, but not accessing it in any way. I'm not sure if you have any. You were talking about walking outside with children. Is that something that you would really be advocating for?
Absolutely, and I know of one primary school in Northamptonshire that was this was before COVID, was regularly taking groups of young children, primary age children, out on a walk every day in the classroom, and actually being so beneficial. You can think of what does a child learn when they're outside with others. it's just so important. And I'm so sorry that we haven't got the people from the forest schools today.
Yes,
because I have a grandchild who's 7, lives in Toaster, and she loves forest schools. And I know lots of children who love forest schools.
Yes.
So, just so advocate anything really to do with nature and children and connecting and restoring.
Lovely. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, people. Yes, paddling pools bring great joy, somebody says. Couldn't agree more. Anything, just the feeling of water is just so lovely. Or indeed, I don't know, just the sound of the rain and the smell of the rain is just really beautiful. I'd really like to suggest that anyone might like to tune into Radio 4 at the moment, or have it on BBC Sounds at 1:45 every day this week. There's been a wonderful program about the outdoors, and so there's 5 different authors who are writing about natural experiences in different contexts. Some are in the city, some are in urban areas or very built up areas, some are out in the far countryside, and they are just beautiful, and I really, really advocate for that. So thank you so much, John. That's really lovely. And again, another reason why I invited John to speak about this is because I think when we think about nature, we often think about green, but actually there is all this wonderful research from Exeter University about blue, the impact of what's called blue. And I think there's a lot of the balance to be had between those two, and giving children access to it in whatever form we can creatively think of. I think also what's really lovely is that we can access these feelings in so many different ways. You played us a sound, which is lovely. I'm so taking away that handkerchief, which is smelling of the wood flower smoke. It's a beautiful thing, and we have these beautiful pictures. Lucy, I don't know if you've been sent any more photographs at all, whether you'd like to put up a final photograph.
Yeah, I've got a couple more. I can share my screen.
Could we share those, please? Oh, Woolacombe Beach, you lucky people. That's one of the nicest beaches in the country. My son's school has lessons on the beach at Woolacombe. So lucky the head was so proactive and promoted sea school. Yes, lucky children. I'm in. Lovely. Could we, Lucy, if you couldn't share the remaining couple of new pictures that have been sent to you. Oh, Julie, thank you so much. Look at that blue. Is this really the UK? That is absolutely incredible. Is this Whitstable? No, I wonder where that is. That is so beautiful. But do pop in the chat, Julie, if you're still with us, where that is. Unless, did she tell you, Lucy?
No, I don't
Julie,
know.
Dallas.
No. She just wanted to continue the blue space.
Oh, lovely.
And then this is from Rachel, a very furry caterpillar.
This is a very furry caterpillar. Wow. Thank you, Rachel. Brilliant. Oh, it's College Lake in Tring. Sorry, I couldn't get to your hand quickly enough, Julie. Thank you very much. College Lake in Tring. Amazing. Not a place that I think of as very green or whatever, but clearly stunningly so. Rachel, that is seriously furry. Any others, Lucy?
We've got some wood.
Oh, yes, amazing old log.
Gnarled wood.
Wonderful,
yeah,
isn't it? Look at that. Looks like a sculpture, doesn't it? Amazing.
And we've got some rolling countryside. Look at that. I love that.
Glorious.
Must have taken
Wonderful.
early in the
Thank you
morning,
so
I think,
much.
with the mist. And then I think the last one, oh no, not there's like tree.
Yeah.
Lovely. And I think
What's
the last one was mine, so I didn't know whether to put it in or not, because this is my family up near Brimham Rocks in North Yorkshire. So just the natural beauty of rocks. Look at that. Just
Amazing.
It doesn't feel real. It feels like they've been
part of a Disney set. That's absolutely glorious. It looks like a person almost. Wonderful. Thank you so much. And perhaps I could invite, right, I've just got a very brief little poll to put up. I know a couple of people have had to go, but if we could just have the second poll, if that would be okay with people. I think Fiona has needed to go as well. So let's just put this up. So the majority of people would like to be restored, relaxed and refreshed. Yes, it's someone would like to be hopeful as well. Quite a lot of people would like to be hopeful. I had a really interesting discussion, and maybe this is something we can come back to next year, about how actually being hopeful is a more grounded position than optimistic. But I think quietly optimistic and hope are pretty close bedfellows, really. But that's lovely. Someone would like to be in touch with their superpowers, and why not, is what I say. Maybe you've got something special planned. Anything new you might try inspired by the webinar? Visualize, yes, include some mindfulness on the walk. And not really, I do a lot of these things already, splendid, but just spend time appreciating the natural world. Well, we wish you very, very well with that, and we hope that's very lovely for you. And that's what most people are going to be doing. Look, 100% are going to be doing that. I think that's the first time we've actually reached 100% on that one. That's absolutely wonderful. I'm really happy and getting away from screens. That's the one that I prioritize, and definitely the times of family and friends. So, but how lovely that after this is going to be, it's clearly being, I think, if not, well, pandemic has shown us so many things, hasn't it? But this is just such an affirmation of the necessity and the beauty of it, and how fortunate we are to have it. So I'm going to just read a poem now. We had hoped to have Catherine Alto with us, but unfortunately she wasn't able to. But this is a splendid book that I've come across that I would really like to recommend. It's called Writing Wild. Lucy will put the reference for you to Catherine Alto. It's called Women Poets, Ramblers and Mavericks Who Shape How We See the Natural World. And I have rarely read a book that has given rise for me to so many different feelings simultaneously. One is I just want to read more of this book. The second is I want to read all the other books that she references. Third is I want to go away and read all the poetry. Fourth is I want to go away and write poetry. And fifth is I can't wait to get outside and explore some of these things. And sixth is I want to go and be an activist. It's like, whoa, what do I do next? It's such a great compendium, really, of the most wonderful, wonderful writers. Poets, ramblers and mavericks who shape how we see the natural world. So I just thought, if I've just not lost my page, which I think I have, which is annoying, I will just read to you one of these beautiful poems that you may know, just by way of finishing for this afternoon. So this poem is written by the very, very wonderful Mary Oliver, and it's called Wild Geese. You do not have to be good. You do not have to walk on your knees for 100 miles through the desert repenting. You only have to let the soft animal of your body love what it loves. Tell me about despair, yours, and I will tell you mine. Meanwhile, the world goes on. Meanwhile, the sun and the clear pebbles of the rain are moving across the landscapes, over the prairies and the deep trees, the mountains and the rivers. Meanwhile, the wild geese, high in the clean blue air, are heading home again. Whoever you are, no matter how lonely, the world offers itself to your imagination, calls you, like the wild geese, harsh and exciting, over and over, announcing your place in the family of things. I think it's such a beautiful poem, and I hope you like it too. And there are so many more poems and beautiful things out there. And finally, I would like to ask Lucy, could you please let us see one of your beautiful puppies as a way just to finish. Thank you very much before Easter.
I've had to mute my script, mute my thing, because you might be able to hear a lot of squeaking in the background.
Those of us who've been to other webinars, I think, have probably tracked the pregnancy of Lucy's dog that's been mentioned, but here is one of Lucy's puppies, Lucy's dog's litter.
My Labradors had 9 puppies about 10-11 days ago, and this one's one of the biggest one of the litter. She's called Dumpling. My kids have named them all, but oh, they're just so gorgeous. They're starting to open their eyes. She's not quite yet, but yeah.
I bet she smells delicious, doesn't she?
I know, yeah, totally delicious. Gorgeous.
Lovely. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you so much, Lucy. And thank you, John. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Pauline. Thank you, Fiona. And thank you, Sally. And I hope that you've enjoyed this afternoon, and that you will have, when it comes, a really lovely weekend, and on Saturday. And when that's when the weekend. No, it comes at 5 o'clock on Friday night, doesn't it? Sometimes I forget which day of the week it is. I've always done that, but you know, during COVID even more so. And we also hope that when Easter comes, you'll really enjoy that. So please take care of yourselves. You're doing fantastic work. We hope that this is a great resource for you, and we will see you at some point in the next term. Take care. Bye-bye.